Senate roll call, day 13, Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Here. Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Ella? Dockstetter here. Ellis? French? Murphy? Garou? Hicks? Hutchings? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Kinski? Kinski? Kolb? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Nethercott? Pappas? Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Scott? Steinmetz? Ellis? Excused, Mr. President? Excused, President Driscoll. Here. 30 present, 1 excused.
Prayer by Father Thomas Coughlin Jr., St. Mary's Cathedral.
Let us pray. Most holy God, as we gather today, help us to reach in and find that inner place of peace in our hearts where your voice of guidance is found. The day is full of bustle and noise as we move from committee meetings to gathering of the whole Senate and back again to committee meetings. Constituents, lobbyists, fellow senators, staff, family, and friends call upon us for our time and attention. In the midst of the busyness of the day, and while doing the work of the people of this great state, let us not forget the whisper we have heard of your voice in the quiet place of our souls. Give us the knowledge, wisdom, and good judgment we need this day, and help us to accomplish all that you need for us to do. We ask this in your most holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a special beyond the pledge today. So joining us this morning is Presley Bray, a 16-year-old from Park County who will sing the national anthem. They didn't tell me much about her, so we're going to ask her to say a little bit when she's done singing for us. She's here with her mother, and we always like to hear the national anthem. So come on up. We've got a mic up here, and what? We will. Okay, and we'll do the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight on the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rang loud, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave, or for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
How great was that? Tell us a few words about yourself.
Pardon?
A few words about yourself, where you go to school, or
All right.
you don't pick on you.
All right. So I'm from Cody, up in the opposite corner of the state, and Senator French is my senator. I am down here for Teen Pact, where all of the teens running around in suits and ties and stuff, where we're learning about how our government works from the inside. I'm 16. I'm homeschooled. My dad was in the Marine Corps for 30 years and is now the president of Downrange Warriors, helping prevent veteran suicide. So, yeah.
Very good. Thanks again very much. Certificate for you. Thank you very much. It was absolutely grand. Really good.
Thank you very much.
That was a nice start to the day. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? Presley's mom, Terry, is in the audience somewhere here in the hallway. There she is, okay. And I'd also like to introduce Teen Pact. They're somewhere here. And like Presley said, all the way from Cody, from one corner to the other, long drive, come down to watch us and learn from us. And so it's a thrill to have them down here. Give them a big hand, please.
Mr. President. Privilege of the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. I see a bunch of scouts up here that somebody's going to introduce probably in a little bit. If they don't, I think we ought to recognize them anyway. As they were standing, I saw some Order of the Arrows in there. I see sashes loaded from one end to the other with merit badges. I see hundreds of hours of dedication to their projects, and I'd sure like to recognize those young adults up there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I have the privilege of the floor to do just that? Thank you, Mr. President. We do in the balcony, in fact, have 12 not just Scouts, but Eagle Scouts, and I'd like them all to stand. So these 12 Eagle Scouts that we have from all over the state of Wyoming have spent not hundreds of hours, but thousands, over 6,000 hours of community service and other services to get here, to get to that point. These are some of our most incredible community members from throughout the state of Wyoming, and they're here with us today. I'd like the Senate to give them a big welcome and congratulations on their status.
I would like to invite the 12 scouts to come down and come onto the floor on the two benches for a little bit, and we'd like to get a picture for the end of the day. So if they'd come down, and Sergeant at Arms will help them. We got benches down both sides. I think it'd be kind of nice to have them down here. Thank you. Senator Kolb.
President Driscoll, privilege of the floor. I'd like to introduce Kelly McGovern, Superintendent of Rock Springs School District Number 1. Welcome, Ms. McGovern, to the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor?
Granted.
Up in the gallery, have a good friend. His name's Ross Schriftman. He is the president of the Natrona County chapter of Wyoming Right to Life and also a member of the Jewish Pro-Life Foundation. Please help me welcome Mr. Ross Schriftman.
you help them get 5 more out of my drawer in my desk of the coins?
You guys want to sit on the floor?
Yeah.
Party over there, party over there.
Yep, we'll get you 5 more of them. Get them. Now we're off to a good day. Reading correction, approval of journal. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the floor? Just one final one, Mr. President. I know everyone's anxious to get to work, but I had to share a little story. This morning, Senator Pappas asked me if I had seen a picture in the copy room back there, and it's a product from our state museum, but it's a picture of somebody from my district up there who was, in 1933, the state marble champion. Well, that made me think of a couple of things. Primarily, it made me think of my dad. And on Military Day, I didn't get the opportunity to recognize my dad, which I've done every year that I've come down here for a couple of reasons. But the marble story fits in because when my father was with the 253rd, they had finished up work and they were in Germany at the time, and the Allied forces won the war. And so, and that was a big deal. Well, so they had a moment to relax a little bit. His older brother was also in the European theater and traveled 200 or 300 miles to try to find his little brother. And he found my dad in a group of GIs with a marble circle, and Orv Landon had quite a pile of cash in front of him. You see, the Landon boys had grown up playing marbles, and they were pretty good at it. And so they played a game of marbles and spent the day together, and then they both managed to get home safe. His older brother became the county extension agent up in Platte County for the next 40 plus years. And then, of course, my dad went to work for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department and did that for over 40 years. That generation came home, those two boys came home to Bighorn, back where the chairman of appropriations hangs out. And they proceeded to build this state, and they handed it over to us. And they did an amazing job. And I just wanted to spend a moment to recognize not just my dad and his older brother, but a generation that came home from that war, and they just pulled up their boots and they went to work, and they built a hell of a state that they handed over to us. So thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Thanks, Senator Landon. Senator Anderson.
Privilege of the floor.
Gren.
Mr. President, that championship marble of Wyoming brings up my brother. He was a champ in 1961 and went to nationals in Michigan and lasted for 4 rounds before he got beat out, but he at least made it to Michigan, 1961. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we're reminiscing about brothers, I'm going to visit about mine just a second. He was deaf mute. And as we were growing up in Boy Scouts, all of us 3 brothers, these little white sashes you see on these kids, that's Order of the Arrow. That's a pretty big deal. That's quite an ordeal to go through that. And back then, when I was a kid, when Charlie Scott was just a young man, that long ago, part of that, and I imagine it still is, part of that initiation was a vow of silence for most of a week while you were earning that. Well, my brother is a deaf mute. He said, "What's the big deal?" You know, so brothers and scouting and marbles, that's all part of our history. It's good stuff.
Randy's going to read a card we've got, and then we'll go to the journal. Or I started on, I guess we could finish the journal.
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the Journal of February 27, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
You've heard the report. Any objections? Being none, report's adopted. Randy, we've got a card to read, I think, and we'll move on to business.
Yes, Mr. President. It's addressed to the Wyoming State Senate. It says, "Thank you. Senate body, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to serve as student page for the 67th Wyoming State Senate. It has given me great insight into the legislative process of government. I would also like to give a special thanks for the snacks and candy that was provided to me during my 2-week stay. I am beyond grateful for the opportunity that was bestowed to me. Sincerely, Rand True."
Today in Wyoming history, Yellowstone Park, designated UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1978, was established by the U.S. Congress as the country's and the world's first national park on this day in 1872. Quote for the day: "Tolerance, compromise, understanding, acceptance, patience. I want those all to be very sharp tools in my shed." CeeLo Green. Before we don't have the farm report. Senator Barlow's gone. Senator Ide borrowed me a U.S. debt clock that he tells me is set back by a week, so we're not current, but we're at 33.9 billion so far and counting. Kind of fun. So we'll do the farm report when Senator Barlow gets back. Committee reports.
February 27, 2024. Mr. President, Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred House Bill 197, engrossed, Sales Tax Administration revisions, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any reports from the House? Okay. We'll go ahead and do it.
From the House of Representatives, February 27, 2024, message number 175. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading in an amended form. House Bill number 52, Property Tax Homestead Exemption. Ayes 55, noes 6, excused 1. Message number 176, February 27, 2024. House Bill number 60, Excess Wildlife Population Damage Amendments. Ayes 43, noes 18, excused 1. February 27, 2024, message number 178. Mr. President, House Bill number 125, Repeal Gun-Free Zones and Preemption Amendments. Ayes 54, noes 7, excused 1. Message number 179, February 27, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 203, Property Tax Reduction and Replacement Act, failed to pass the House on third reading. Ayes 14, noes 47, excused 1. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thanks, Randy. House bills on first reading. Can I run through these? House Bill 134, first reading of the House file.
House Bill 134, engrossed, Property Tax Deferral Program Amendments, sponsored by Representative Lawley. Passed the House, ayes 44, noes 18.
House Bill 134 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 125, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 125, engrossed, Repeal Gun-Free Zones and Preemption Amendments, sponsored by Representative Harrelson. Passed the House, ayes 54, noes 7, excused 1.
House Bill 125 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. House Bill 103, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 103, engrossed, Property Tax Assessment Ratio for Residential Property, sponsored by Representative Allred. Passed the House, ayes 55, noes 7.
House Bill 103 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 93, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 93 engrossed, Animal Reimbursement Program Account Amendments 2, sponsored by Representative Heiner. Passed the House, ayes 62.
House Bill 93 is referred to Committee Number 5, Ag. House Bill 75, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 75 engrossed, Public Property Amendments, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee. Passed the House, ayes 55, noes 7.
House Bill 75 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 52, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 52 engrossed, Property Tax Homestead Exemption, sponsored by Representative Summers. Passed the House, ayes 55, noes 6, excused 1.
House Bill 52 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 36, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 36 engrossed, Natural Resource Protection Act, sponsored by Representatives Farm. Passed the House, ayes 59, noes 2, excused 1.
House Bill 36 is referred to Committee Number 5, Ag. Senator Barlow, Farm Report.
So thank you, Mr. President. Privilege for the farm report is there'll be a picture come up on the screen. And some people ask, who's taking care of things when you're in Cheyenne? And certainly my wife is number one in that arm. But then I also have 3 guardian dogs out with my sheep. And this is Yeti. She's a young dog, so she's learning the ropes. She's guided by Ruth, who's another dog who can climb and jump unbelievably. And unfortunately, this past weekend, there's a 3rd dog, Ghost, and Ghost is a older male, and the 2 young ladies, they whipped him pretty good this past week. So he's taken some recuperation time. So that's who's taking care of things with the sheep while I'm down here, under the careful guidance of my lovely wife, Kelly. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks for the farm report. Is Yeti a cooler dog? Senator Barlow.
Is Yeti a cooler dog? Yeti actually came from a little farmstead just north of town here, where she had numerous other siblings and needed a more area to run in. And I said, well, do you think she can handle square miles? And they said, oh, no problem. And that is absolutely true. She can handle square miles. So
Yeti is a cooler dog.
She is a cooler dog.
Bills on second reading. House Bill 12, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 12, Wyoming Dairy Marketing Act repealed.
House Bill 12 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 13, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 13, Flow-Through Pools Exemption.
House Bill 13 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 15, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 15, Health Insurance Reimbursement of Overpayments.
House Bill 15 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 25, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 25, Medicaid Third-Party Payer Conditions.
House Bill 25 have been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 33, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 33, Mining Operations Blasting Requirements.
House Bill 33 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 34, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 34, Solid Waste Municipal Cease and Transfer Funding.
House Bill 34 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 35, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 35, Limitation on Environmental Rulemaking.
House Bill 35 have been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 54.
House Bill 54, Wyoming Reads Day.
There is an amendment. Could we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 54, second reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 12, delete.
Senator Anderson. Second reading amendment, second House Bill 54.
Oh, yes, Mr. President, yes, Mr. President, on House Bill 54, second reading, number 1, I'd like to delete John and Sue Jorgensen on line 1, or page 1, line 12. I thought I moved it. Mr. President, I move amendment number 1, second reading to House Bill 54. Okay, and I want to delete John and Sue Jorgensen and on page 1, line 12. And the reason for that is that it was brought up that we don't have names on all the other things that we do. This is very important that we do it as Wyoming Reads. We just wanted to give some benefit to the guy that started it. We've already talked about that. You've all heard about John and Sue. So if it's going to be a problem for Wyoming Reads, we want it out of there, and I know John would want it out of there also. Thank you.
Further discussion, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks to the bringer of the amendment. The concern was brought forth by, I think, legislators who have historically had to deal with this issue and more sensitive topics and more personally relevant here. As we recall, there's been sometimes efforts in the past to name things after people we know or former legislators, and we have resisted that, and that's why we have no highways in our state named after people. For the first time, I think, in Wyoming's history, has a bill been passed with someone's name in it out of the Senate. We have resisted that as well. So really, as we broach this new time in our state, to maybe respect and listen to that wisdom of resisting the urge to identify specific individuals, either Wyomingites or not, in our legislation. Otherwise, we lend ourselves on a pathway that's really irrevocable. And so out of respect for all Wyomingites and all people, to really keep it non-personal and to keep it about the subject and the purposes for which those people have endured and experienced, such as, no doubt, the good Jorgensens from Natrona County deserve to be honored in such a way, but perhaps not in the green books. And so this bill is in honor of the service that they've done in service of reading to the state's children, but recognizing the historical precedent that we have respected here for so long to resist names in bill titles and in legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Nethercott. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 54. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment is passed. We're back on the bill. House Bill 54 having been read 2 separate times, questioned, shall be read a 3rd time. Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 66, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 66, engrossed, firefighter cancer screening benefits.
House Bill 66 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be heard a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 74, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 74, public health nursing budget requests.
House Bill 74 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 81, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 81, engrossed, public officer training amendments.
There is an amendment. Could we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 81, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 20, strike.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 81 and ask for the body's favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the public officer training requirement bill that we spoke about yesterday, and during that discussion, I brought up that one of the things that the changes within the bill on lines 3 and 4 of page 2 strikes rule making authority from the department. And specifically, I mentioned that rulemaking authority actually exempted certain public officials with certain levels of credentials from having to go through the training, such as a CPA. So what, Mr. President, what this does is our good LSO staff went to those rules and just basically pulled the relevant language out of those rules. And what it does is it says, that basically if you have other training or certifications or educational backgrounds, you can be exempted from those training, from this specific officer training requirement. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Further discussion? Seeing none. We're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 81. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 81 is passed the Senate. Further discussion, Senator Hicks.
No, Mr. Chairman. Next one,
Okay. Thank you. Just saw you stand. House Bill 81 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 83, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 83, engrossed, public retirement actuarially determined contributions.
There is an amendment. Can we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 83, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 7, delete.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, absent any objection, I'd ask that House Bill 83 be laid back for 1 day. I have an amendment, but I haven't had an opportunity to show that to the Appropriations Committee yet. So just as a courtesy, I'd like to lay that back for 1 day.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Without objection, House Bill 83 is laid back for 1 day. Bills on third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do we have a consent list?
Yeah, Mr. President, we do. It's kind of running around my desk here someplace. I'm trying to track it down. Here we go. Well, that ain't it. Let's go. Somebody go. Nope, got one of those. Mr. President, we do have a consent list. The consent list is as follows. House Bill 8, commercial driver's license, hazardous materials endorsement. House Bill 10, grace period, state land lease renewals. House Bill 11, state land lease amendments. House Bill 14, prior authorization regulations. House Bill 16, Sutton State Archaeological Site legal descriptions. House Bill 21, charter school leasing. House Bill 23, vehicle registrations, e-certification or certificate and grace period. House Bill 26, emergency protective services, effective period. House Bill 27, DFS and law enforcement cross-reporting. House Bill 40, school district trustee oath of office. House Bill 46, Chancery Court, time limit for resolution of disputes. House Bill 71, broadband development subaccount amendments. House Bill 72, workers' compensation provision for adverse deviation. House Bill 73, abandoned mine reclamation accounts.
Would anyone like any of these removed from the consent list? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 72, workers' compensation provision of adverse deviation removed, please.
Without objection, removed. Anyone else like any of these removed? Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? House Bill 8, commercial driver's license, hazardous materials endorsement. House Bill 10, grace period, state land lease renewals. House Bill 11, state land lease amendments. House Bill 14, prior authorization regulations. House Bill 16, Sutton State Archaeological Site, legal description. House Bill 21, charter school leasing. House Bill 23, vehicle registration, e-certificate and grace period. House Bill 26, emergency protective services, effective period. House Bill 27, DFS and law enforcement cross-reporting. House Bill 40, school district trustee oath of office. House Bill 46, Chancery Court timeline for resolution of disputes. House Bill 71, broadband development subaccount amendments. And House Bill 73, abandoned mine reclamation accounts. The chief clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Beitman. Boner. Bouchard. Brennan. Case. Cooper. Dockstetter. Ellis. Aye. French. Furphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. Ide. Jones. Kinski. Kolb. Landon. Larson. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. Kolb. President Driscoll. On the consent list, 31 aye. House Bill 8, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 8, 31 aye. House Bill 10, are there any changes? Scott, conflict? President Driscoll, conflict. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 10, 29 aye, 2 conflict. House Bill 11, are there any changes? Scott, conflict. Driscoll, conflict. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 11, 29 aye, 2 conflict. House Bill 14, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 14, 31 aye. House Bill 16, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 16, 31 aye. House Bill 21, are there any changes? Case aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 21, 30 aye, 1 no. House Bill 23, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 23, 31 aye. House Bill 26, are there any changes? Beitman? Aye to no. Salazar? No. Ayed? No. Hutchings? No. McEwen? No. Steinmetz? No. French? No. Brennan? No. Larson? No. Bouchard? No. Kolb? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 26, 20 aye, 11 no. House Bill 27, are there any changes? Hutchings? No. Bouchard? No. McEwen? No. Ayed? No. Steinmetz? No. French? No. Salazar? No. Beitman? No. Brennan? No. Larson? No. Kolb? No. Correct? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 27, 21 aye, 10 no. House Bill 40, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 40, 31 aye. House Bill 46, are there any changes? Scott? No. Scott, no. Ayed? No. Boner? No. Steinmetz? No. Closing vote? Hutchings, no. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 46, 26 aye, 5 no. House Bill 71, are there any changes? Case? No. Bouchard? Aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Hutchings? No. Boner? No. Steinmetz? No. French? No. Ide? I to no. Salazar? No. Beitman? No. Brennan? No. Larson? No. Cole? No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 71, 19 aye, 12 no. And lastly, House Bill 73. Are there any changes? Aye? Aye to no? Closing vote. Hutchings, no. Larson? No. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 73, 28 aye, 3 no.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 8, Commercial Driver's License, Hazardous Materials Endorsement, House Bill 10, Grace Period, State Land Lease Renewals, House Bill 11, State Land Lease Amendments, House Bill 14, Prior Authorization Regulations, House Bill 16, Sutton State Archaeological Site, Legal Description, House Bill 21, Charter School Leasing, House Bill 23, Vehicle Registration, E-Certificate and Grace Period, House Bill 26, Emergency Protective Services, Effective Period, House Bill 27, DFS and Law Enforcement Cross-Reporting, House Bill 40, School District Trustee Oath of Office, House Bill 46, Chancery Court, Timeline for Resolution of Disputes, House Bill 71, Broadband Development Subaccount Amendments, and House Bill 73, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Accounts, have passed the Senate. Bills on third reading. House Bill 32, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 32, Geologic Sequestration Unitization Amendments, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, an act relating to environmental quality.
There is an amendment. Could we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 32, third reading amendment number 1, delete.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 32 and ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. President, the good senator from Sheridan County brought an amendment on second reading, I believe it was, that provided clarification of relationships between the surface estate owner and the mineral estate owner, and based on primacy of the minerals, so that included 3 different provisions. There was some concern that was raised by stakeholders, DEQ, OGCC, that it was more appropriate to have that language within the provisions related to the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission as opposed to the Department of Environmental Quality. So that is the primary thrust of this amendment. And then there was additional concern, well, there's a little bit more that goes in. One just adds, you can see in Romanet 2, in accordance with statute. So this is talking about the dominance of the mineral estate. It just provides a statutory reference. On the Romanet 3, there is a little bit of change of the language, again going to a statutory reference, where prohibited mineral interest owner from developing the owner's minerals in accordance with Wyoming Statute 35-501, again providing that statutory reference. So the intent of this is clean up, although there's a little bit of a change in the language on that Romanet 3 based on how the original language was structured. Again, I'd ask for the body's favorable consideration on this move of where these provisions would be within the bill.
Further discussion, Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree that my amendment was in the wrong place, and that needed to be moved, but there's, I don't think this quite gets to where I was going at. It does a little bit, especially Romanet 3. That narrows it down by using that statutory reference, 35-501. Basically, only means you can drill through, penetrate the pore space with an oil and gas well. It doesn't protect, this language wouldn't protect mining interests of any mineral deposits down there, anything of that nature, which was, my amendment was broader and meant to protect all mineral owners. This narrows it down strictly to oil and gas. Doesn't quite do what I wanted it to do. I talked to the bringer of the amendment about whether or not we should lay this back or just keep working at it. At this point, I don't think it's worth laying it back. I think you vote it up or vote it down, but that's just kind of where I'm at with it. I think this thing needs a lot of work. I don't think I'm going to vote for the bill, but for this amendment, again, just know that this narrows it down to just an oil and gas well penetrating that pore space. Thank you.
Senator Case? Okay. For the comment, Senator Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too wonder why that portion was removed where it says removes where located where carbon sequestration under blah, blah, blah was written. Why was that removed? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like a little more discussion on Romanet II. It looks to me like it puts the mineral estate and the pore space on equal footing rather than one over the top of the others. If you could explain that a little further.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, one thing I would start with is we either need to pass this amendment or lay it back. Either of those is acceptable if we want to fix it, but it's flawed without this amendment passed according with the First Amendment based on where it's placed. So if anybody wants to lay it back and work on it, if the good senator wants to do that, that's in order. And I have no aversion to that. I thought we were at a place where we were able to move this forward. Mr. President, as far as the questions, the language regarding the original Romanet III, this is the question from the good senator from Laramie County. The phrasing would suggest that the mineral development was within the zone that the CO2 is sequestered. That's not the intent, and that's why that needed to be removed, right? You've got the need to have mineral development in different geological strata as having primacy, not just within the zone where the CO2 is being sequestered. So the original language was over-limiting, which is why that language was struck, and the statutory reference to 30-5-501 was provided. Now, the good senator from Sheridan pointed out that that is largely an oil and gas piece of statute, 35-501, and that's reasonable. One thing that might solve this problem, honestly, would be striking in accordance with Wyoming statute, and it would be just left with prohibit a mineral interest owner from developing the owner's minerals. At that point, it takes it out. And if that gets it passed, we can simply lay it back and do that without hesitation, and I'm fine with that. So I want to make sure that that's contemplated. To the good senator from the eastern part of the state, question regarding Romanet II. So this is the original language, and as you read it in with a K above, no order for unitization issued under this section shall diminish, impair, or otherwise alter the dominance of the mineral estate over the surface estate and pore space interests. So the surface estate and pore space go together. Those are the same estate at this point in time statutorily. And even if they were severed, they would be equivalent, which is an awkward thing that is not clarified in statute, to be clear. Not clarified anywhere. This bill doesn't fix it. This amendment doesn't fix it. That's probably a problem. But this is consistent with the original memo language. And then it's just referencing that dominance of mineral estate, 34-1-152. That's what that statute says, is that the mineral estate is dominant over the surface estate. And so, Mr. Chairman, with that, again, I'd ask the body to either vote this forward, or if the good senator does want to lay it back and make that change, I'm more than happy to, or if any other senator wants to lay it back and make that change.
Before you speak, Senator Scott, so the only thing in order, he spoke twice, is either to lay the bill back or we go to the motion. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, exactly, is this the appropriate time to ask it be laid back? Because it's important to get it right. Yeah, let's lay it back, Mr. President. Mr. President, do request it be laid back.
Without objection, Senate File 32 is laid back 1 day. Senate File 72, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 72, Workers' Compensation Provision for Adverse Deviation, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to workers' compensation.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just a clarification, this bill's gone through the process very cleanly and everything, but one of the things, Mr. President, if I could, came out of Appropriations Committee is we're going to take investment earnings, we're going to designate them in the new language in this bill as revenue, and then we have a range 0 to 5%. What happens to revenue? How is revenue considered differently within this particular investment earnings thing than non-revenue? Can it be handled in some different way that I'm not understanding in the bill, somewhere elsewhere in the law? Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Having been read 3 separate times, the question, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, a great question, very technical question regarding the language revenue associated with how some of those funds might be invested. I don't recall with direct specificity from our work from this past summer about that. However, the revenue goes back into the fund. And the purpose of that is it can't go anywhere else but the workers' compensation fund. So important to recognize that we're not generating revenue on behalf of the state to be used on any other purpose other than the workers' compensation fund. The goal of that and the reason why we're doing that is to reduce rates for employers who are contributing to the fund. That's the goal and that's the purpose. The fund is well funded and is doing well, and the bill comes to us also at the request of the department who is responsible for managing that fund and understanding the viability of it and concerns about it and how those dollars can be more readily used with the long-term goal of reducing the burden on employers.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to amplify that, as we stated before, what the department is contemplating is a 2.5%, not reimbursement, adjustment to the fees that are charged to the businesses that are highest at risk, and the figure on that is $23 million per year, and so that's where that comes from.
Further discussion. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and now that my colleague from Campbell County brings that up, that is an interesting point, because revenue has a very distinct meaning in the way we use that in cash flow and balances, and I don't necessarily understand why we're calling investment earnings revenue now, and it's not I just would like to answer to that question as to why have we named these different than we do in other places within investment earnings and stuff. So if I could get an explanation on that, it would help.
Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't involved in the details of this, but as I understand it, this reserve is an actuarial reserve for to prepare for the contingency where things don't happen as planned, where the deviation is greater than it was expected. So it's a reserve fund, okay, that actuaries think is appropriate. The question for this bill is whether you can grab the earnings of that reserve fund or leave those earnings in the reserve fund. What this bill does is captures the reserve fund is an invested fund, and it captures the earnings off of that and uses it to support the general system. It would have to be actuarially sound. The actuaries actually are saying, we need to put aside this much money. Well, because to prepare for contingency. Over time, money piles up on money as it's invested, and apparently there's a sum in there that wasn't really part of the actuary's determination of what we need to prepare for. It's earnings on that, and it's the earnings that we're seeking to grab with this bill. I hope I've done that justice. It was dry, and I spent the morning on it.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall House Bill 72, Workers' Compensation, Provision for Adverse Deviation, pass the Senate? The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 72, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 72, 31 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 72, Workers' Compensation Provision for Adverse Deviation, has passed the Senate. Senator Salazar.
Privilege, Mr. President? Thank you. Members of the Senate, we are privileged to have today a group of students called Team Pact. They're in the gallery right now, and it's headed up by Mr. Luke Britzik. These are homeschool students, and their 4-day class is really a dynamic hands-on leadership experience where students learn about state government from a Christian worldview. These students gather to run for office, participate in mock legislature, and learn about how they can be effective leaders in their community back home. And I think I personally know one of these students, but if you can give them a Senate greeting, appreciate it.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file before lunch. Your call.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself in committee at all.
Heard the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is passed. I'm not sure who's coming up, Mr. Vice President. I've got 2. Senator French, come on up. They gave me 2 choices.
The Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The first bill for your consideration is House Bill 138. The reading clerk will read the House bill.
House Bill 138, State Funds Pool A Participation and Fund Limits, sponsored by Cap Finance Committee, an act relating to the investment of state funds.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill, I believe, 138 do pass. And to explain this bill with an inspirational explanation is Senator Northcott.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, you have heard of Pool A. Generally, Pool A is an investment fund within our treasurer's office. It holds an aggregate of generally the trust funds, so the Wildlife Trust Fund, Game and Fish Fund, the Culture Trust Fund, and others, and it invests those funds, pools them together for the purposes of accelerating revenue or earned investments, depending on the definitions you like to use, and that's what Pool A does. It's a challenge, though, for the treasurer's office to invest those funds when they are not a high dollar amount of funds. And so what this bill does at the request of the office and reviewed by your Cap Fin committee is to require that participation into Pool A for the long-term investment strategy requires a minimum investment of $5 million. And otherwise, without that, again, it doesn't make sense for how the fund is invested and how those funds need to be committed for a long-term investment strategy, and actually harms some of the other, for the ability to earn the maximum revenue. So the bill puts that requirement on Pool A, requiring any participation of any future trust fund to have a minimum balance of $5 million before being allowed to aggregate together for maximum return. And then the bill, also recognizing that there are a couple of trust funds that don't have that minimum requirement, appropriates those monies in order to allow for their continued participation in Pool A. And so if you look at page 4, that's where the money is appropriated. And so we're putting in $2,035,000 into Wyoming Public TV in order to meet that $5 million mark. And then on page 5, there's an appropriated another $1.9 million, and that purpose is the State Fair Endowment Account. And that allows for both of those trust fund accounts to continue to be invested in Pool A, meet that $5 million minimum requirement, and have that requirement on any trust fund accounts that want to participate in Pool A moving forward. That's what the bill does. I'm happy to stand for questions. Again, those assets are not available for withdrawal, making that $5 million requirement important. It is for a long-term investment strategy for those trust funds. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Anderson's motion to approve House Bill 138, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 138 has passed Committee of the Whole. Next up is House Bill 70. Will the reading clerk read the bill? And there are amendments to that also.
House Bill 70, engrossed, local government distribution, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to local government funding.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Kinski.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move with the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 70, local government distribution. Folks, you have distributed to you, one's dated the 23rd and again today. Just want to make sure we didn't lose it. A copy of how the distribution breaks out between the way the bill originally hit the floor with 105 million per the biennium, and then this next column showing how at 146.25 million as it came over to us from down the hall, how that breaks out by each county, and then the difference between the two versions and each city and town. With that, I see that we've got 3 different amendments, Mr. President. I would ask that the first amendment be read in.
House Bill 70, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, corrected copy, page 1, line 4, after.
With that, I'll turn it over to the amendment, the sponsor, Senator Boner. Oh. He's not here. Let's lay that one back then, Mr. President, if we can, and proceed to the next amendment. Could we have that read in?
House Bill 70, Committee of the Whole Amendment 2 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 14, after.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to the amendment sponsor, Senator Steinmetz.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move first reading our Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2 to House Bill 70 and ask for your favorable consideration. Good senators, what this amendment does, it looks complicated, but it's not. I represent 3 of your 6 hardship counties in the state of Wyoming, and they are having issues with Title 25 placements. If you know anything about Title 25, those are involuntary placements.
Drop 1 or 2.
And the counties have to pay for the 72-hour hold. All 3 of my counties were facing skyrocketing costs regarding that. So all this does is of that $146 million the good chairman spoke of, it just says 600,000 of it will be set aside for those hardship counties. Then they would present their receipts and be reimbursed for that, those Title 25 expenses up to $100,000 per county out of those 6 hardship counties. That's all it does, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on against the amendment, and not because I don't agree with the content of the amendment, but honestly because we haven't done this before, and I think it's a big consideration. In this distribution that we've been doing for 8 years, I want to say, somewhere in that ballpark, 9 years, has not been treated like a budget bill. It has not had carve-outs. It has not had special amendments. We haven't had 57 second reading amendments on it to figure out how to appropriately distribute the funds that we're going to distribute. And it's probably good that we haven't done that because we already fight about this bill enough without having to go into details about how certain aspects of the funds should be spent. So this would be the first. And I don't think it's a good precedent. We have a budget bill, sort of, that serves that purpose for the operations of government. And if we start down the trail where we start earmarking particular aspects of the local government distribution funding, it's going to change the nature of this legislation. That's my first concern. My second concern actually gets into a nuance of that, which you'll notice that in this particular amendment, it actually says there are funds appropriated. It's not of the original funds, they shall be distributed in a certain manner. It's there are funds appropriated. By having a second appropriation in this bill, the executive below us may or may not decide that this is a line item vetoable bill. I don't know, but I know that that is certainly open, and in the past, that has been the standard, is when it's an appropriations bill that is open. Previous chief executives have decided to interpret that means that there is the authority to use line item veto, whereas this bill was originally drafted without this amendment, that authority does not exist. I urge caution.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have deep concerns about this. I think that the Title 25 issue is really bared by the large counties, the large municipalities, because they have the services. Kind of the opposite of what I see here. I think that the Title... All right, thank you. The large county bears the brunt, large counties bear the brunt of Title 25 issues. They are typically used as a place to transfer other smaller counties' Title 25 issues to the larger counties because, frankly, in many cases, that's the closest place for some services. The Title 25 issue is a massive one, and the reimbursement schedules are massive. You know, just the equality, the fairness, many things to do with Title 25, which I don't believe should be in this amendment. I think it opens up a whole nother set of issues in this supplemental. I support the supplemental as presented, but I can't support in the manner this is trying to be distributed for those purposes. I just feel like my county in particular gets dumped on by the surrounding counties that don't have services. Or the joke goes, if they have money, they go north to the land of high mountains and in some cases, I suppose, maybe better services they feel. But I just don't think it's proper. I think it's a perilous road we go down when we do this, because what's going to be next? On and against the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, on and against the amendment, every county has trouble with Title 25. I don't think we should carve this out for 3 counties that have a little problem with it. I agree with the previous speaker. Most of the big counties get most of those Title 25 problems. They don't stay in the small counties that have no facilities for them. So on and against the amendment.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, in addition, the counties have, and small towns have some control over the level of the Title 25, because it is often, as I understand it, Mr. Chairman, the first responders, often law enforcement, that decides whether somebody really ought to start down the road that takes them to the Title 25. And we've seen some instances, as I remember, Mr. Chairman, where local policies have been developed that any suggestion there might be a problem, they go to Title 25. And this would remove that financial pressure and give the incentive to keep this within reason. So I'm concerned that the Title 25, Mr. Chairman, is a mess. It's been a mess ever since the eons ago judiciary joint interim study that led to it and didn't consider the financial implications properly. We need to have a look at Title 25 because it's causing problems. If we were for all counties to refund a percentage, so we kept some of the incentive, Mr. Chairman, that might be a different proposition, but I think it's a mistake to reimburse all of them because it does remove an incentive that does help keep this program within reason and confined to the cases where it really is needed. Because I have seen communities in the past react in a way that caused way too many Title 25 referrals that really weren't justified, Mr. Chairman. So on and against the amendment in this form.
Senator Barlow, were you going to? Nope. Any other comments? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the good discussion on this amendment. I would be remiss not to bring it forward from my counties. I represent 3 of the hardship counties. This would be for all of them, and I just would ask for your support.
Ellen, do we vote on this amendment and then go to the next one? Okay. Next, I'll shut the mic off. Just wanted everybody to know what I was doing. Okay. Ready for the question? All righty. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz? Motion to adopt.
I'm sorry, where did it fall
Committee of the Whole, Amendment number 2 to House Bill 70. Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. That looks like that has failed. We're back to amendment number 1. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, or House Bill 70, asks for the body's favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, this is an amendment that will help out our law enforcement agencies. There's been some municipalities and counties throughout the state that have had to deal with a significant increase in arrests year over year. I think that there's been a lot of discussion coming from the central part of the state about, in particular, a homeless problem there. And that's the genesis of this amendment. But I want to make it clear that the goal here is to make it available for any municipality that may be dealing with a similar circumstance. And so we're trying to be as even-handed as possible here in supporting our law enforcement if they have seen a significant increase in activity that they have to deal with. And so what the amendment does is it takes $500,000 from the LISRA one-time funds for the next fiscal year. And if any law enforcement agency, local law enforcement agency, has experienced a 15% or more increase in arrests from 2022, calendar year 2022 to 2023, then they'll be available to apply for this separate pot of money. So it's important to not necessarily incentivize any law enforcement agency to go out and arrest more people just so they get more money. That's why it's based off of the year-over-year increases that have already occurred. So those will be what it'll be. Like I said, one-time funds to help deal with, I think, an increased crisis. We heard a little bit previously discussed with mental health issues, substance abuse issues. I think we do have a serious problem on our hands, and this is meant as a sort of a Band-Aid to help out our frontline workers who are dealing with that each and every day. It's just that, it's a stopgap. It's to help those folks who are dealing with this. I think we have, hopefully it engenders a larger discussion about our policies regarding support for those who are dealing with, say, the Title 25 system, who are dealing with mental health, substance abuse issues that unfortunately our law enforcement officers have to deal with. So that's the amendment. That's what it does. I hope that we have a good discussion.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And reluctantly, I'll stand against this amendment for the same reasons that I couldn't support the previous one. And it's not that I don't admire and appreciate both of our senators behind me who point to some really important policy concerns for all of us, Mr. Chairman. In my community, we suffer from both angles of what's been brought up here this morning, and that is, the flip side of the previous one is my county doesn't even have enough money in any coffers anywhere to try to get people back home who are brought to my county from somewhere else, for example. And then the difficulties pointed to by my good friend from downriver, this is becoming a more and more serious problem in our community. It takes a lot more, though, unfortunately, than an amendment into the local distribution bill. I appreciate the words of our senator from Albany County. You don't want to go there with this distribution piece. Your Judiciary Committee had compelling testimony during the interim regarding this mental health, substance abuse, homelessness problem. It's becoming very real in our state, Mr. Chairman. I would suspect that that might be considered as an interim topic coming up by a joint Judiciary Committee, for example. We'll have to wait and see, but I commend the identification of some serious policy concerns here, but I don't think this is the vehicle. Really appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and part of this may have been covered. I stepped out in the hallway, so one, we've got a qualified period of 22 to 23. I want to know how many counties qualify, because we already know now it's out there, and we didn't have that identified. And then I'd kind of like to follow on is we've got a definite problem out there, and I think it needs dealt with, but this isn't the right vehicle or the right bill to do it with. And I think we all have to look at it, and I think we need to be really careful going forward on this legislation that we do. The last amendment was the same, and we do this overarching thing, and it only targets very specific counties. And I think when we get into that, it really leads to some division and some hard feelings between part of it. We've got, without a doubt, we have and have-not counties. I live in some of the have-not counties. But we really need to do it in an idea of fairness, how we go about, particularly on this local government funding, so everybody's treated somewhat reasonably fairly. And as we get into this, it just leads to piles of amendments because everybody brings whatever the local flavor is for theirs. So I'd ask us to repeal this, and let's bring it to an interim or something else. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I would echo the comments of the two previous speakers and add that I think the interim study, one of the things it really needs to focus on is I think there is a distinct population out there that is a major part of the homeless population that may need much more services in the way of mental health and substance abuse, residential services, that will cause these people to be off the streets and getting treated for the underlying problem that's producing the homelessness. Because I think, Mr. Chairman, the big deinstitutionalization efforts that went on years ago were well justified, but they went a step too far, and there is a population that if you don't have the ability to put them in a residential involuntary treatment facility for a while to get them started down the road of sobering up, because it's substance abuse problems or it's mental health, and they may need to be placed in a mental institution until they really can get on the right medications to treat their problem. And I think that's where our homelessness problem, from what I hear from back home, is really coming from. I think we need to take a hard look at those. They are expensive services, but unfortunately, there are certain people that really need those, and that otherwise they become homeless. They destroy their own lives. They do a lot of harm to our communities, and we really need to take a hard look as an interim study by the appropriate committee or committees to get this problem resolved.
Senator Culp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think there definitely is an issue, and it's probably really exacerbated by the issue with the southern border, which will only make this worse. I say this in full support of our state trying to deal with this for the benefit of our citizens. However, this Christmas tree, as I like to call it, was a substitute for food sales tax. And now all of a sudden, we want to use it for other purposes. So I reluctantly don't support this. I don't support it because we have to keep this for what it was originally intended for, else it's going to be everything to everybody at any time they wish to make that argument. So on and against the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, that was an interesting discussion. Appreciate the feedback. Just point out that, we've had lots of studies on this. We've done lots of interim work. I can remember back to 2020, the Judiciary Committee had a similar provision where, if a county is disproportionately affected, in that case by Title 25, they'd be entitled to additional compensation because they're taking the brunt of that effort. And so at some point, we're going to have to actually do something, Mr. Chairman. I think that this is a modest step in addressing a very serious issue. I'm sorry, it's, maybe some folks don't think this is the appropriate place for it. But I hope that, the one-time nature of these funds, we're not creating an ongoing obligation. We can focus on solving problems here and doing so in a way that's even-handed throughout the entire state. So I hope that you can support the amendment and look forward to the further discussion.
Further comments? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Boner's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 70, please say aye. Opposed, no? No. That motion has failed. We're back on the bill, House Bill 70. Further questions, comments on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Kinski's motion to pass House Bill 70, please say aye. Opposed? House Bill 70 has passed Committee of the Whole. Next up is House Bill 9. Will the reading clerk read House Bill 9, please?
House Bill 9, Fuel Tax Licensee Information Deadline, an act relating to taxation and revenue sponsored by the Transportation Committee.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass recommendation of House Bill 9. I'll go ahead and explain this good little bill. It's so easy. By the time I transfer it off to somebody else, I could be done with it. So this came through the Joint Transportation Interim Committee, Mr. Chairman. All it does is industry went and worked with the department on a simple little fix to move licensing from 10 days to 15 days to provide the information in a timely manner. They requested it as a, just to kind of help us out. They worked it out through the interim. Everybody agreed. It's a kumbaya bill. It deals with diesel tax on page 2, alternate fuel tax on page 3. And yeah, that's your bill, Mr. Chairman. Oh, and gas tax on page 1. Those are your 3 areas where it's affected. Moves it out again from 10 days to 15 days. We heard no opposing views in committee on this bill. Everybody supports the bill. I'll stand for any questions. If I failed to cover anything, I'm sure good members from the Transportation Committee would love to chime in. But that's the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Beitman. Any questions? Comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion to adopt committee of the whole, House Bill number 9, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That House Bill 9 has passed committee of the whole. Next up is House Bill 64. Would you please read it in? Thank you.
House Bill 64, Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety Amendments, sponsored by Representative Larson, an act relating to public health and safety.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report, to do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 64, Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety Amendments. For an explanation of this bill, I'd ask that you call on Senator Baldwin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you today House Bill 64, Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety Amendments. This is a pretty straightforward, small bill. And let me just explain to you what the problem was. When the Department of Fire Safety and Electrical Inspection was looking at their budget, they realized right now that historically the fees for electrical inspections are traditionally 60% to the agency and 40% to the general fund. The proposal is this, is that we change that 95% to the agency and 5% to the general fund. As some of you in here may realize, a couple of times we've tried to raise the fees, and that has failed. Consequently, the department has less and less revenue each year, and I'll just read to you some quick numbers here. In 23-24, their projected revenue was $1,207,000. 25-26, that drops off to $460,900. It's projected in 27-28 they will go underwater at $366,609, and by the following 29 and 30 they would be underwater by over $1 million. And that is with the projected same revenue and same expenditures. The proposal is this, is that we change that 60-40 split to a 95 and 5 split, 95 to the agency and 5%. It doesn't change the fees. And of note is that this doesn't change anything in the existing plan review fees. 100% of electrical plan fees goes to the general fund. So this has no cost to the general fund. It just simply changes the fee split for the department to keep them solvent. And I would note that at some point down the road, members of this body or members of the legislature may be faced with further look at this, or we may have to look at raising fees again. Or the possibility is, if we didn't pass this bill, that this department will be coming to us looking for increased general funds, where right now they can remain solvent, which won't be the case in a couple of years. So it's a pretty simple thing, just changing that split from 60-40 to 95-5 without raising any fees or changing the structure in any other way. The second part of the bill is that it clarifies some of the language. It's gotten old in defining the responsibilities and the qualifications of the electrical inspectors. Are pretty straightforward, a couple of grammatical changes you can look at in the bill. But that's the bill. It's pretty straightforward, and I urge your aye vote.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, why wasn't this considered by JAC, and did it come up as a requested issue in the past? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This wasn't brought up before JC because it's not a general fund request. The request has been made in the past for an increase of the fees that has not been granted. If my memory serves me correct, that's come up as a bill and before the JAC. This did not go before the JAC because this is not a funding request. This is just a change of the structure of how they collect their fees.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hicks.
A question, with the change of the funds in it, how many new employees do they anticipate hiring to do the inspections? And where would they be located at?
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although when you look at the bill, you'll notice that it does say new, and that's where that came from, because they don't anticipate hiring any new. Right now, they have 8 inspectors. Without this change, they will likely have to lay off inspectors. They will probably lose inspectors. And the end result of that is a lot of these electrical inspections that need done around the state, which vary across the state. It depends on the municipality, who uses them and who doesn't. The municipality, your county, your city has the option of using them or not using them, and that varies across the state. But this would mean no new inspectors. This means just simply keeping what they've got and not facing the possibility of losing personnel.
Further questions? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole, House Bill 60. She's getting me lined out. Hold on a minute. I'm currently lined out. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 64, please say aye. No? House Bill 64 has passed. I call on Senator French. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Privilege of the floor. I'd like to introduce County Commissioner from my county, Park County, Lloyd Teal. And he's also related to me, so if you'd give him a big hand. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next up is House Bill 20. Would you please read it in?
House Bill 20, School Finance Regional Cost Adjustment Study, sponsored by the Education Committee, an act relating to school finance.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I move when the Committee of the Whole rise and report to do so with the recommendation that House Bill 20 do pass. There was a standing committee amendment. I ask it be read in at this time.
House Bill 20, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 3, line 11, delete.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the Standing Committee Amendment. Mr. Chairman, what this bill is all about is getting ready for the recalibration, making sure we have some data that we're going to use, and the recommendation came to us in the committee hearing here that we were off on certain of the dates when certain of this information would be available. That availability is controlled by forces outside our control. They have to report to the feds, and they've got a long-established system, that sort of thing. So all the standing committee amendment does is adjust certain of the dates to when the information is realistically going to be available. Urge adoption of the standing committee amendment.
Any further comment? Question being called on Standing Committee Bill number, Amendment Number 1. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 has passed. Back to the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Scott.
let me go through this bill in a little detail because this is an important topic. We will be hitting, not this coming interim, but the interim after. And some extra reporting here. Starting on page 2, the school district, they're asking school district report to state superintendent the number of unfilled vacancies, and you can see the categories here and the definition of unfilled vacancies. What we're clearly looking for here is data for the people that are going to look and see, are our salaries adequate? And obviously, when you're looking at that, you need to figure out what your vacancies are. If you aren't being able to fill your vacancies in a timely fashion, we need to know about that. I think we may also need to, and I think there may be a second reading amendment, we need to find out about the number of vacancies that they have that they aren't trying to fill. Because there has historically been complaint, Mr. Chairman, that there's a slush fund being built there. And it may be that there is, it may be that there isn't. We're going to have to look in the recalibration at the whole issue of, is our model realistic on salaries? Are we able to recruit enough people? Are we pushing the salaries too high such that we're not meeting our goals for small class size? There's some real issues in there. And this is seeking to get information that's needed there. The next item is what are they paying their employees in the way of mileage? That's a minor expense that we do maybe reimburse for. We need to deal with that. Looking for data there. We're wanting detail on on page 3, starting at line 11, we're asking for wage information for occupations that are relevant in the counties, looking to see what the local competition for school teachers is. Are we being competitive there? Obviously, something that you look at when you say, are the salaries that are proposed in the system realistic or not? And when you have employees that leave, are they going to competing businesses, competing occupations in the same area? That's the next item there. And then we want information on the retirements, and is our retirement system such that it's causing some of our vacancies, and what can we expect there? That is relevant to whether our models funding are adequate or not. And are there some factors in our retirement system that are, Mr. Chairman, are causing retirements that are not justified, causing extra vacancies? Is that going to be a problem? And then the final item, just a couple of items where we're asking people who know to tell us what some mileages are, simply to save our high-priced consultants from having to compute those, get it agreed on set of things there that it's information we do need, and we'll get them from the official sources so we don't have to pay somebody to tell us what we should already know. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. It is preparation, and we need to make that preparation for the recalibration. Be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Hicks, and then Senator Barlow.
Yeah, so, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, when we get to Romanet 2, it talks about the average mile reimbursed by each school district for travel by school district personnel and the course and scope of employment. Is this designed, I guess I need a much more detailed explanation of this, because I'm not aware that we actually reimburse school districts in the model for travel by individual employees. And so I'm trying to figure out, what are we trying to get here with this request of this information? Is it we're now looking at potentially, and some districts may doing this already. I don't know that there's anything in the block grant would prohibit them to paying mileage for employees to commute back and forth to work. But what specifically are we trying to get at here that then would be addressed in the recalibration process?
A couple more questions. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate the effort in trying to better inform ourselves as we go into our next recalibration. And while the second page of the bill talks about anonymous information, when you get down to the bottom of page 3 into page 4, and we're talk about individual employees leaving a school district and going to another business, and then we're trying to understand what their new wages are. I guess I'm interested whether our agency responsible for workforce can actually even accomplish that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. You stay standing if you want, Charlie, save you getting up and down. Listen, this is overdue. We need to do it. We had a piece of legislation earlier that we moved out of here and moved to other places in the building, and it disappeared, and it still leaves us out west with an insufficient approach to take care of our education community. You've heard me say this many times. It just keeps rapidly changing out there. This is needed. My concern is in 2 years, we 24, 25, then the next one, 26, 27. This gives you everything you need to know. We are losing teachers to the private sector. I don't doubt that we can find out what those salaries are. I'm not concerned about that. But unless we make some changes here and do it rapidly, we've got a problem that's unresolved. And I'm not so sure 2 years gets us to the problem quick enough. It's a difficult issue. I'd like to hear our education chair say, how quickly can we put this together with solid information and make something happen, or does it get lost in the government files?
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, let me attempt to answer the questions. And, Mr. Chairman, my ability to remember them is not what it used to be, Mr. Chairman. So I'm probably going to skip one, at least one. With regard to the information, the school districts do pay mileage when their employees have to travel within the district. And I know that for a fact, Mr. Chairman, because years ago, my late wife worked for the school district and traveled from one school to another and did receive a mileage reimbursement. And the question is that a relatively uniform expense among the districts, just generally handled in the block grant? Is there something going on that does burden some districts differentially? Is there a problem there? We're just trying to find out just basic information so that we can do an accurate job. I don't think it's leading to an escalation in what we spend, because we're paying for it right now in the block grant. And we need to see, is this a significant item or is it not? Mr. Chairman, there was another question that escapes me for the moment that I can't remember what it was. I remember there was a second question. And the third question is, as I gather the timing of this, can we get something done earlier? Mr. Chairman, this is aimed at the recalibration, and saying that we've got to get the recalibration right. I don't, and the timing is geared to dealing with that particular thing. I know there is an escalation in the difficulties in the western part of the state, but we haven't found a better way than actually getting a recalibration. And to my way of thinking, that problem really emphasizes that we need to do the recalibration and do it right and get a bill this time. We've failed a couple of times before, and that is a major problem. Mr. Chairman, so I'm trying to get prepared, this bill is trying to get prepared for the planned recalibration. And if there needs to be a stopgap to handle the time between now and when we can get it done, Mr. Chairman, that needs to be a bill that's brought either charged by the Management Council to Joint Education or brought as a private bill. And Mr. Chairman, if we could have the second question repeated, I can't remember what it was.
I believe it was Senator Barlow. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe I can't remember it either, to my good colleague. It was have to do with the workforce services and the information between an employee that leaves the district and their future employment, and whether that is something we have a connectivity with on an individual basis. We're not talking about broad categories of employment. We're talking about an individual leaves a school district and goes to a private employer. Obviously, if they're out of state, we wouldn't have access to that. But even in state, do we actually have access to that information and it not be personally identifiable? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, the answer is particularly for in-state, yes. And Mr. Chairman, I can remember when we did the welfare reform, we wanted to know what was happening to the people that were leaving the welfare rolls. And this agency was able to identify for us that, in that case, 60% of them were showing up on the unemployment tax rolls that the employers were filing, showing that they were employed, and it did show this kind of information. The federal government regulates that and requires that we protect the identity of the individuals, because obviously to compute some of that, you have to know it. But that can be done. So this information should be something we can obtain, particularly where they're going within the county, because they show up on the unemployment tax rolls that they're being paid taxes, unemployment taxes on it. So the answer is yes, we won't get perfect information, but we'll get enough to have a sense of how important the local competition really is.
Further questions or comments? Questions or comments? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with favorable recommendation of House Bill 20, please say aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 20 has passed. Next up is House Bill 197. Would you please read in the bill?
House Bill 197, engrossed, Sales Tax Administration revisions, sponsored by Representative Harshman, an act relating to sales tax. There's an amendment, House Bill 197, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 9, line 13, delete.
You've heard the reading of the bill and the amendment. What's your pleasure? Just a minute. We'll go to amendment number 1. Senator Boner, oh, okay. Senator Beitman. Senator Case, got to move the bill first?
Yeah, I think Senator Beitman's going to do that. I think you should call on him, sir.
I did.
All right, Mr.
Senator Beitman. Senator Beitman.
Mr. Chairman, are we on House Bill 197? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass recommendation of House Bill 197. There is a standing committee amendment. Can we have it read in, please? Has it been read in? It's been read in. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll move the standing committee amendment and ask you to vote no, and here's why. We heard testimony during the bill, and then the Department of Audit came in last minute with a kind of a off the cuff amendment that we might have made a mistake on. It muddies the water a little bit. And I'm working with the Department of Audit and the Department of Revenue as we speak to clean that up and get a tighter amendment for Committee of the Whole. So if we could, let's just dispense of the standing committee amendment, vote it down, and then we'll talk about the bill.
Question being called on standing committee amendment number 1. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
That motion has failed. Back on the bill.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody from the committee want to explain the bill, or you want me to just go through it? All right, I'll take one for the team. All right, Mr. Chairman, what you have before you is used to be a joint revenue committee bill, but it didn't make it through introduction because it had a hidden tax on streaming services that somebody identified, and then therefore the body down the hall voted it down. So then you see it sponsored by an individual who also is the co-chair of this committee, and he took out that $5 million streaming tax. The rest of the bill is intact. It was a committee bill that we went through with the Department of Revenue and through the interim, cleaned up our sales tax administration statutes. So that's what you have before you today, Mr. Chairman. And so flipping over to page 2, important language there, person not engaged in the, customary regular activity of sales. This is for lines 12 through 15, clarifying what a vendor is for sales tax purposes. So this carves out people that are doing garage sales once or twice a year, or selling stuff maybe on eBay or on the internet once or twice a year. So that's what that means, Mr. Chairman. Let's see here. This is basically all cleanup language, and if you want me to, I could go through the whole thing, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I might just sit back and see if there's any questions, and then I'll take them as they come, rather than hold you guys up for lunch, but I'll stand for questions.
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question about potential abuse by being an infrequent person doing something, let's just say, over the internet. What sideboards are there? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions or comments? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This language came from the Department of Revenue. This was good enough for them to be able to weed out your non, professional sales. If we need to tighten this up, Senator, I would be happy to work with you on an amendment to that effect, because I did hear from some other folks this morning from the public that were concerned about that language and wanted to tighten it up. So I'd be happy to work with anybody on this amendment to make them get this thing where it needs to be.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to look, but there's a definition of remote sales that we adopted a number of years ago, which says you have to have a certain number of transactions. And I just can't quite find it, but it's a certain of either if you're a small vendor, but you do a lot of transactions in the state, you're captured, or if you don't maybe make a lot of sales, but it's a large amount of money. And so we'll get that definition to you, but there is a definition in statute. I'm a little slow on finding it right now.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at bottom of page 3, the language change in the E paragraph on the sales of power or fuel to a person. Originally, it was engaged in the transportation business when the same is consumed directly in generating active or motive power. I see the language transporting tangible personal property by railroad or by pipeline when the power or fuel is consumed directly. Mr. Chairman, that seems to do quite a different thing to me as I read it, and I just wanted to know what the discussion is there. And honestly, I can't even quite think of how the pipeline becomes relevant in this circumstance, because we need to be consuming the fuel to transport by pipeline tangible personal property, I think. So I'm a little lost there.
Further questions, comments? Senator Piteman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Answer the first question. Yes, so if you flip to page 11, in section 2, we have a repealer, 39-15-501A2. That's the, if you recall, the Wayfair decision, our neighbor to the east kind of led the charge in adopting statutes to comply with that. There were two different elements. Physically located in the state is one, and the other was an economic threshold of 100,000 in sales or 200 transactions. This gets rid of the 200 transactions, which a lot of other states have already gotten rid of that 200 transaction threshold. It cleans up our statutes to mirror theirs. Hopefully that answers that question. And as far as the other question on the pipelines, the department said there was confusion as to whether or not we wanted to tax the mode of power used to transport. And so that's what this deals with. Sales of power or fuel to a person transporting by railroad or pipeline when the power or fuel is consumed directly in generating. So you're not taxing the mode of power. That won't be taxed. It's just, hopefully that clears it up. If that doesn't clear it up, I'll get you in touch with. It does? Okay, thank you.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I am still confused on that paragraph E. I don't think we tax things on the railroad, and I still don't understand how we're taxing things on the pipeline. So that paragraph E is still a question for me. Thank you.
All right, I'll get with the Department of Revenue and get a solid answer for everybody on that one, sir.
Further questions or comments? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 197, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Ayes have it. House Bill 197 has passed. Committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole take leave to rise. Microphone.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise and beg leave to sit again.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
We have standing committee reports to read in, please, before the noon recess.
February 28, 2024. Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 30, Controlled Substances Act Possession Amendments, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Furphy, and Landon. No, Senator Case and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 28, 2024. Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 31, engrossed. Peace Officers, Records, and Reporting. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 28, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 148, engrossed, Regulation of Surgical Abortions. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. No, Senator Baldwin. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Do we have messages from the House? Please read messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 28, 2024. Message number 182, Mr. President, Senate File 4 passed the House on third reading. Senate File number 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits. Ayes 46, noes 16. Message number 182, February 28, 2024. Senate File number 15, Acceptance of Retrocession Federal Military Installations, passed the House. Ayes 62. Message number 183, February 28, 2024. Senate File number 17, Plane Coordinate System Amendments, passed the House. Ayes 62. Message number 180, February 28, 2024. Mr. President, Senate File number 3, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. That's Ayes 62. The House respectfully asks Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Message number 184, concurrence requested, February 28, 2024. Mr. President, Senate File 20, electricity rates for costs that do not benefit Wyoming, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 62. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
House Bill 3, Property Tax Exemption for Long-Term Homeowners, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 3, engrossed, Property Tax Exemption for Long-Term Homeowners, sponsored by the Revenue Committee.
House Bill 3, Property Exemption for Long-Term Homeowners, is assigned to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 4, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 4, engrossed, Property Tax Refund Program, sponsored by the Revenue Committee. Passed the House. Ayes 62.
House Bill 4, Property Tax Refund Program, is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 45, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 45, engrossed, Property Tax Exemption, Residential Structures and Land, sponsored by Representative Cragel. Passed the House. Ayes 62.
House Bill 45, Property Tax Exemption, Residential Structures and Land, is assigned to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 116, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 116, engrossed, Sage Grouse Implementation Notice to Landowners, sponsored by Representative Angelos. Passed the House. Ayes 62.
House Bill 116, Sage Grouse Implementation Notice to Landowners, is assigned to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Nope,
whoop, here you go.
Senate stand recess until 2:15, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President.
Announcements?
Mr. President, Vice President,
Yes, sir.
announcement, the Wyoming Senate Republican Caucus will be meeting at 1:30 in room 110. You will need to bring with you, you should have a list that was distributed yesterday for the governor's appointments. So that is at 1:30 in room 110.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, we'll continue our discussions in Senate Corporations, your number 7, of House Bill 126, Child Care is a Residential Use of Property. We'll start at 8 a.m. in 110.
Thank you. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Your Minerals Committee meeting now, 12 noon, in Capitol Extension Room number 4, to hear House Bill 141, State Land Oil and Gas Leases Operator Requirement, and House Bill 145, Opening Bank Amendments. Next one will be a short one. House Joint Resolution 3, grow support for local input and federal rulemaking. We also have another opportunity for you for lunch. And speaking of all things related to energy, it'll be an energy-related lunch. Wyoming Energy Authority, room 5354 in the extension. They're inviting you to stop by, visit with them, with the Wyoming Energy Authority, UW School of Energy Resources, Enhanced Oil Recovery Institute, Geological Survey, Oil and Gas Commission, and many more. They'll be there to answer your energy questions and give you lunch.
Thank you, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Your Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee will meet upon noon recess, say at 12:20 in Capitol Extension Room W21 online to consider House Bill 86, Vehicle Lien Amendments.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Vice President, your favorite committee, Appropriations, will meet today at noon, at noon in W113 to hear House Bill 67 engrossed Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund Administration. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. We break for lunch until 2:15.